Hello fellow BookQuesters, it is I, Aaron the BookQuester, and today we've got the book The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. I don't think I pronounced that right, but let's get over that and get into it. So as per usual, I'll be giving you guys a spoiler full summary and plot summary. Then I'll do a little bit of analysis kind of as an aspiring writer, what she did well, what I really liked, and rate it out of 1 to 10. So let's get straight into it. So, plot. Mary Lennox is the main character, and she's British, and she was living in India with people who worked for the English government. And she was kind of neglected by her parents, so she kind of grows up to become a presumptuous brat. Her parents then die, and she gets sent to Yorkshire in the moors, where her uncle lives. It's a big, spooky manor. And kind of, for me, that kind of setting is amazing. And however, for Mary, who's lived her entire life in India, well, it's not exactly an ideal place. It's lonely. There's nobody she can play with. The surroundings are unfamiliar. So she goes there, and she's kind of unhappy, and she's already kind of a brat, so she whines about it a little more. And then she slowly starts getting used to the house. She looks around, she explores this big spooky mansion with all these paintings and weird rooms and all these different things in it, and it's all kind of exciting, and she's starting to enjoy herself little by little. She explores the house even more and even hears some kind of ghost screaming. We'll probably get back to that later. And then, moves around. Then one day she finds a key that she kind of just finds like on the ground in the garden of the large estate, and she realizes that this might be the key to the secret garden, a garden that's been locked up for the past decade or so, that was owned by her uncle's deceased wife. And her uncle had locked up that garden because he felt like he couldn't really deal with that anymore after the death of his wife, and she found the key for it. So she's quite interested, and after a robin kind of leads her towards the door, she manages to use the key to open the door and enter the secret garden. There she kind of falls in love with the garden. She wants to make stuff grow. She wants to revive the rose bushes and various different plants that have been kind of neglected within the garden for years and years. But because it was neglected, it's sort of beautiful in its own way. It hasn't really been touched by human hands. It's wild, it's overgrown, and that has a specific type of charm to it that, nowhere else really does. Spring comes and she sees, the garden coming back to life, and, she's starting to become healthier alongside with the garden. She was a sour, yellow-faced kind of a brat, and she slowly grows up to be like a healthy individual. She also meets a boy named Dickon, who is the brother, I think, of one of her maid, of the person who kind of helps her out and things, And Dickon is kind of a magical boy. He's lived his entire life in the moors, and he kind of knows how to talk to animals somehow. He's very attuned with nature. He has like a crow and like a freaking goat following him around. Like, he's just a cool guy. And she slowly becomes close with Dickon, shows him the garden. They start, building up the garden together, planting seeds, uprooting weeds, etc. And it's just an amazing time. She's getting healthier and healthier, and alongside Dickon, she slowly makes the garden prosper. She also meets Colin, who is the son of her uncle. Now, her uncle is a hunchback, so Colin has been told his entire life that he'll become a hunchback too. He'll be like a failure, he's an invalid, as the British like to call him, and he's going to die eventually, is what he believes. And because of that, he's been kind of depressed, stuck in his bed, always feeling unhealthy and always feeling like there's a bump at the back of his, on his back, what am I saying? That is the beginning of a hunchback, just like his father. And Mary's like, that's nonsense. Like, you don't have a hunchback. You're like a perfectly normal boy. So, and then she tells him about the secret garden eventually after a little bit of haggling. And they go together to the garden, and slowly Colin also gets better. She starts to be able to walk instead of using a wheelchair. He magically starts to, feel better. He starts to enjoy the fresh air of the moor instead of hating it. and he starts to like the outdoors as much as, if not more, than staying indoors. It's amazing. And so when the uncle returns back home, he finds a once pouty girl healthy and happy. He finds what he thought was his invalid son that he had kind of been a deadbeat dad to be perfectly healthy and standing on his 2 feet. And Dickon, the magical boy that everybody likes, with all those animals. The freaking Dr. Dolittle of this book. So that's kind of the story of The Secret Garden. Now let's get into the analysis. First of all, I think this book is quite interesting in how we have an unlikable protagonist, right? Mary Lennox is a brat. She's annoying to everyone. She whines. She can't even put on her own clothes without ordering someone to help her out doing it. So she's not exactly someone that you would ordinarily want to be close to. But at the same time, she's very charming and endearing in her own way because of the brattiness. And because she's unlikable, and because she's a child, we expect her to learn. We expect her to develop as a character to become better and to kind of fix that bratty aura that she is enveloped by and become a nicer person. And we as the reader can expect that character arc and kind of hope for that and hope for that development and just look forward to that. And I think that is a huge advantage of having an unlikable protagonist like this. They're charming in their own way. They're kind of interesting. Not only that, we can also expect them to become likable. And we're excited to see how the author is going to do that. And that is, this is a masterclass in, turning around an unlikable protagonist to become likable. I myself really resonated with Mary Lennox because I felt like, I've had a phase, and I think a lot of people did have a phase of, thinking you were at the center of the world, when you're a kid and everything revolves around you. She's a spoiled little brat. But then she develops and she learns empathy. She learns to have fun. And, I can see a little bit of myself in her. And I think a lot of people could. She's a relatable protagonist, even though she is an unlikable one at the start of the book anyway. So I think that was really masterful characterization and really masterful development. Now, let's talk about the first line within this book. So I'm just gonna, how do I do this? I'm just gonna put this down really quick. And let's talk about the start of this book. So I'm just gonna read the first line. When Mary Lennox was sent to Misselthwaite Manor to live with her uncle, everybody said she was the most disagreeable-looking child ever seen. It is true, too. She had a thin face and a little thin body, thin light hair and a sour expression. Her hair was yellow and her face was yellow because she had been born in India and had always been ill one way or another. So that is the hook, the first line of the book. And I think that's really interesting because of several different reasons. The first reason is, again, we just talked about the unlikable protagonist. This sets up kind of a conflict for the story, right? This is about a girl going to an unfamiliar setting from a different place. So we can expect that plot and we can expect that progression. We want to see what happens. We can also feel that if this character is as unlikable as she seems, and we already know she's kind of an annoying character just from reading the description of who she is and how she looks like, then how is she going to handle moving places, right? We're already asking questions. Not only that, we get a direct visual of the character. Someone that, is obviously supposed to be unlikable, again, connecting back to the idea of the unlikable protagonist that I just talked about, but also someone that we can kind of start to root for. And the book introduces all of those elements, all of those things that's gonna blossom into the main conflict, the main plot, and the main character of the story within the short 3 or 4 lines in the first paragraph. And I think that is an excellent example of using a hook effectively to immerse yourselves into the story. I think also there's 2 more things to talk about. The first thing is atmosphere. The book has a very particular aesthetic to it, right? It's very, it's very British, first of all. I think that's quite interesting. But also there's this vibe. There's this kind of cozy, candle fire, hearth fire vibes. Like it's Christmas and you're in the middle of the moor and you're having fun. There's nobody there and you're enjoying the nature, you're in a little cottage in the woods. It gives that innate sense of wondrous joy and interest. And I think that's just it just gives this tender feeling to you. And I think that creation of the atmosphere is a combination through the use of this very nostalgic, the setting that I think any child would wish for: a secret garden, a large, mysterious manor, going to a magical, different place, right? So I feel like all of these elements really work together to give this very particular feeling, very particular vibe, a kind of vibe that I feel when I'm reading. It's very escapist. Like, it allows me to escape reality. And I think that's just something that I really needed to talk about. It's really a big part of this book. Another big part of the book is the dialogue, the use of Yorkshire. When Dickon is talking, when Mary's maid is talking, I felt like was just amazing. It was amazing use of very particular accents, very particular dialogue, and I've never seen like this kind of accents and stuff really shown well in a book, right? You can say, oh, in a thick British accent, in a thick Yorkshire accent, like, oh, hello there, mate. Like, you can say that, but I've never seen it done in a way where you've written it in a way where you would read it like it has that accent, which I thought was quite interesting. So see, something like this. If that goes around the way, thou'll come to the gardens, she said, pointing to a gate in a wall of shrubbery. There's lots of flowers in summertime, but there's nothing blooming now. Now, obviously, I don't have a Yorkshire accent, and I don't actually know what it sounds like. But because of how it's written and how it's kind of, how the dialogue is, expressed within the text, we can get a good idea of what that looks like. And I think that's just an amazing part of this book that really brings the setting and the characters to life. As you could probably tell, I really like this book. However, obviously, there's some themes of, there's kind of undertones of colonialism, a little bit of racism, racist stereotypes kind of within this book as well. However, again, it's a product of its time, right? This is a very, very old book, written during a time where there wasn't as much awareness around this issue, so I don't really it doesn't really bring down the reading experience that much for me. And I think you can take it just as almost like ignorant children not really knowing what they're talking about as well, if you really want to, address that particular part. But I feel like on a large part, it doesn't affect the reading experience at all. And, it's a product of its time. It's not like this author has some kind of agenda to be racist or to push certain stereotypes. I feel like it's just an enjoyable story. And if you take it that way, I think that's fine. No, not the racist stereotyping is not fine, but, considering what I just said, it's an enjoyable read. So I'm going to rate this book at a 9.5 out of 10. The 0.5 is taken off because of the racist, like the undertone, the colonialist undertones that is unavoidable, but it still is part of the book, right? So I can't pretend that it doesn't exist, so 9.5 out of 10. Honestly, this is the book that got me through finals and like exams and kind of academic stress, because as soon as you open these pages, I'm not a student in South Korea anymore. I'm not a high school senior anymore. I'm Mary Lennox. I'm in the manor. I'm looking around the mysterious place. I'm looking at the garden. I found a secret key. It's very, very immersive. It truly embodies the definition of an escapist novel, and I enjoyed every single second of it. It made me smile. It made me laugh. It made me feel like I was a kid again. And I'll 100% reread this book in the next several years just because of that innate feeling that this book really manages to encompass. Feelings that I only get when I'm watching something like Ancient Magus' Bride, which is an excellent anime, by the way, which is completely different, but it's still a story, right? And I think there's just a particular charm that this book has, that the classic book has, that really just makes me tingle in all the right places. So that's about it. That was a plot summary and my analysis and my rating of The Secret Garden. I would highly recommend everyone, if you haven't already, to read this book. It does not matter how old you are. If you're an 8-year-old, you can enjoy it as an 8-year-old cosplaying as Mary Lennox. If you're a 17-year-old, if you're a teen like me, you can enjoy it while imagining your childhood. If you're 75 years old, you can still read the book and remember your childhood, right? So I think, it is truly a classic for all ages. You can really, really enjoy it, and that's about it. And like always, your BookQuester, Aaron the BookQuester. That's about it, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. Have a great day.